I don't. Way better.
I guess. Fudgesicles. Good choice. Just gave Matthew one of those the other night and he loved it.
We're turning into twins. We both just sit here and nod and smile and eat fudgesicles. Good point.
I'm gonna have to go to my freezer and get something like that.
Like,
Don't know. One of our other worker owners found them on sale or grabbed them from an auction or something like that. They're fun. And they decided they go right over the stimulants there, so they're very practical. So it's actually, yeah, it's not even the light.
everybody here okay? Thank you. Welcome everybody to this edition of Beers with Bill. We're live at TWB Brewery in the brew house with head brewmaster Peter Collins. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me back. This is time number 3 for me. I always feel the second time I was like, this is great. Thank you so much. But are you scraping the bottom of the barrel here?
No,
Time number 3. But thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about the first beer we're going to try tonight.
Sure. The first one is Folk Summer is the name. It's an odd thing because it's sort of an extinct or retired German style. It's a German ale. It's a Cottbusser is the name of the style from the town of the city of Cottbus in Germany. And one of the reasons it's called a favorite is because it doesn't adhere to the Reinheitsgebot or the German purity law, because it has oats in the grain bill, but also molasses and honey in the boil. And we put our own little twist on it by adding ginger in the boil. And it's one that we do mostly seasonally. So it's a summertime beer for us because it's light in body and color. It's low ABV, super refreshing with the ginger. So we usually do a couple of tanks for the summer. It's very good. It's one of my favorites whenever it comes to.
Questions coming by. Okay. How did you come across this style?
So I did the previous brewer who was here, Colin Canavan.
Okay.
He found the recipe and adapted it for us, and just realized that it was one of those styles that very few people are doing because it did fall out of favor in Germany. And we did a little bit of research and dug around and found at the time, which would have been the first time we did it, would have been probably 2017, if not 2016. But at the time, there was one brewery in the U.S. that had a Cottbus style beer on. So that made us a little bit unique. But since then, of course, there's been a couple of others that popped up in Canada as well. It's very refreshing.
It's absolutely refreshing.
I don't usually sort of go off about the beers that I do. I probably should more, perhaps. But this is one that every time I get into the bright and I'm doing my carbonation check and I'm getting those very fresh samples, every time it tastes great, and it's just it's a wow beer for me. I just love it.
So have you changed or made variations to it over the years?
Yes, in fact, the first tank that we did, the first batch that we did, in discussions with Colin and I, the ginger was a little bit too on the spicy side, less on the flavor side.
Okay.
So I actually did a little bit of research, found this odd, random kind of YouTube channel post from Castle Malting, where they talked exactly about the thing that we were discussing, which was the spiciness of the ginger. And he had very simple scientific explanations for it, that depending on where you add it in the boil, it extracts different chemicals at different times. So we were adding it, I think, sort of in the last 5 minutes of the boil, which was bringing out that spiciness. And this particular video post said, you know, giving it more time in the boil, you get more of the flavor and less of the spiciness. So we just shifted it around in the timing of the boil, and it worked perfectly.
So using whole ginger, grated ginger?
Yeah, a whole fresh ginger, and now I'm just blitzing it in my food processor and throwing it in the last 15 minutes.
You throw it in the satchel?
Yeah. That thing right there. Right there. As we're sitting in the brew house, all my props are right at hand. So yeah, just put it in the bag, and then that way it's not going to be clogging up any pumps or the plate chiller transfer.
Yeah, we had quite a conversation with Steve from the Intente about blowing up his heat exchanger by clogging it up. And Rob at Shortfinger came in with the keg of the last one that we did as a collab. His comment when he put the keg down was, "I hate you."
Yeah. And we've talked about my issues here, the hazelnut beer that we had at the beginning of last year. So yeah, that stuff happens. It still happens. Just when you think you've got it right and you've got it dialed in, then something else happens.
Well, absolutely. And that's all part and parcel of this. I'm sure that at times you think that the time of day, the time of year that you brew the beer makes a big difference.
Cycles, everything factors in.
I'm looking forward to when you guys, put a little brew kettle out there in the middle of the night on a full moon, just to freak out the neighbors.
Yeah. We'll see what we can do.
So I haven't prepared you, so I didn't send you any of my questions ahead of time.
Amazing.
So I'm going to stump you a couple times.
Excellent. I love good stuff.
The last 2 years and almost 5 months, we've been going through the world of COVID. In your estimation, how has the craft beer world changed in the last 2 years?
Big question.
Absolutely.
Hard to say. At our end of things, it's all been switched over to packaging. That initial switch for us, which our tap room was draft only, growlers, all that kind of stuff. We had to immediately switch over to packaged beer to be able to get to people's houses. So we've gone through that evolution initially into bottles and then into cans. And now just basically all of it is, not all of it is going to cans, but taproom has reopened. So we've had a little bit more draft sales and still some can sales. So it's just finding that balance in all of it. I think I've spoken to a couple of brewers and breweries lately who sort of realized that, sometimes the more sort of esoteric or odd beers with the fruit or the sour with fruit or that kind of thing, they've sort of realized that the basic sort of pale ale is what sells the most. But then I've also talked to other brewers who sort of the opposite is true. I was just telling you earlier that I was in Ireland for a little bit in May and talking to a brewer over there about his struggles with COVID and asking him, like, do you guys still have to do like an Irish dry stout and an Irish red ale and a lager? Is that on your docket? And he said, yes, it still has to be there. But we discovered over COVID that because people are able to drink at home now more, that they are more interested in the sort of American pale ales and IPAs and hoppier beers and the more interesting things. So it's sort of, depending on where you are, things have sort of flipped in one direction or the other. I think we've all realized that packaging is a big thing, because if people can't get to you to try the beer, you've got to get the beer to them somehow.
You guys got your own packaging now? Because the first time I met,
Yeah.
Northern Canning Line was in there, I believe, packaging.
Yeah, that's still our sort of monthly go-to. They've been great. We also have used the Block 3 in the past just for like top-ups, because they were able to can off of kegs. We've since switched to using Job Site at Stratford for the same reason. They're able to can off of kegs. And we've also got our own two-head filler and a seamer. So we're able to do stuff in-house. Unfortunately, it's fallen to me, and I don't have a ton of time to dedicate to, one, learning the canning line or the two-head filler and figuring out the seamer. So it's sort of a bit piecemeal. It's not as instant packaging as some of us were hoping for when we got it in. Yeah, it takes time to learn, that's all. And it's not a background that I have per se at that level. So it's been a bit of a learning curve for me, for sure.
The city will tell you the frustrations of packaging lines. That's for that right there. Yeah. What's been for you the most challenging thing over the last few months? Yeah, last few months.
Keeping up with demand, basically. So the best problem ever, right? We've been selling lots of beer. We have booths at the St. Jacobs Market and at the Kitchen Market. So those plus various events that we've had, plus the increased traffic in the tap room since we've reopened in March, I think it was. All of that puts a strain on demand and production, but luckily we've been able to keep up. We haven't run out of beer, we haven't run out of cans. I don't even want to say yet, because I don't see that happening right now. James is our sort of sales coordinator, numbers guy, who's very awesome. Came to me back in, it was shortly after we reopened, I think April or early May. And he's great with spreadsheets and numbers. And he showed me projections of production and sales and so forth. And he pointed to a cell on the spreadsheet that said, we're going to run out of cans on this date in the spreadsheet. And so at that point I said, well, I don't want that to happen. So I didn't let it happen. So I was able just to basically increase production as much as I could. I have an assistant that I've been working with, Pete gets to use one of the worker owners here. So that's been great. It just allows us to brew and sell at the same time and get as much beer into tanks and into cans as we can.
So I'm going to make not an assumption, but the issues with supply chain are not as severe as they were 2 years ago or a year and a half ago.
Oddly for us and for me personally, the issues of supply chain from 2 years ago were non-existent for me. I wasn't experiencing any of that. I don't know why. We had some minor hiccups along the way, but nothing major. I've had more troubles, and it's minor stuff. More troubles in the last 6 months with supply chain stuff than I had in the previous 2 years. But again, it's super minor. I mean, the latest one is, the peaches that I get for our New England IPA were delayed by a week. So that puts the beer, that puts my production out when that's such a short timeline for the beer anyways in the tank. To have a key ingredient delayed by a week at that point, it is problematic. And it's also, I mean, they're frozen, but I don't have to large enough to store everything here. So I need to have those sort of just in time for those peaches to come in. And that was one thing that was delayed, but malt occasionally, hops occasionally, last 6 months. That's sort of, it messes with the schedule a little bit, to say the least.
that style of beer, we back to other things.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that, we're fairly nimble, so I can sort of leapfrog around that particular beer with another beer that is basically ready to go and have that come out. I really try not to have it affect release dates, and I target those release dates with enough time to give me that wiggle room. I don't like it because then it bumps me right up against the release date, but success so far. Yes, yeah, that's very good. I mean, we had a few mess ups along the way, but over the last 2-3 years, I would say it's par for the course.
I'm gonna say, I wondered from that.
Yeah, well,
It's been probably a godsend.
try and keep it all.
and the mess ups are daily, but it's
Well, is that normally part of it?
degrees of messing up.
Let's talk about the second beer.
So the second beer is Thank You Farm. It's our American Pale Ale. It's one of what I would call sort of our legacy beers. That this was around before I came on. It was around for the opening. So again, previous brewer Cullum. This is pretty straight up American Pale Ale. It's about 5.5, 5.6% ABV. Much more bitterness up front than most of our other beers. Not similar hopping, but sort of usual hopping for an American Pale Ale. Columbus, Cascade, Citra, the sea hops on this one for sure. Again, more upfront bitterness, but there's also the dry hop beer as well. Cheers. And I did have to apologize to our live audience here because, again, another sort of happy accident that sales for this one have been very good. And when I sent you the promo list a week or two ago, this was on the list, and now it's not available on tap for this evening. But lots of cans available, so we're satisfying our wonderful live audience here. So, can for us.
We'll turn it around later. Graham Hardy is in our audience tonight.
Thanks for coming, Graham. Beautiful.
How are you managing the price increases and stresses that relate to in supply?
So far, they haven't been passed on to the customer. Our prices have remained steady. I think we did a price increase at some point during COVID. I want to say like a year ago or 2 years ago. So we did do a price increase, and we haven't adjusted it yet. We did do some calculations. Again, I think it was about 6 months or so ago, and discovered that some things have increased, some things have decreased. We've saved some money in various places, and that our actual cost per liter for the beer is about the same, regardless of the price increases that most of us are seeing. Which sounds weird, but I've switched some suppliers, and so they're a little bit cheaper, and so we're saving money there versus previous calculations that we've done a year or two ago. So it all sort of balanced out, and that we didn't necessarily need to adjust our pricing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's going to come and bite us a little bit later, but
It's interesting. So
Yeah.
you were able to find suppliers that could give you a comparable product for a little bit less money.
Yeah.
And that in this day and age is quite the feat. Because we're running through a couple of things. You're running through an inflation. And to coin the new word that I've been reading, we're also running into green inflation, where people are actually inflating prices just because it's like, I'm going to do it now because I can do it.
that's right. Yeah, we've got all the factors in place that it looks fine for me to do a price increase. Gas prices are higher, all of shipping is
Yeah,
higher.
but the thing is, energy costs being that high.
Yeah.
That affects everything that you do,
Yeah, absolutely.
because everything at some point in time ends up on a truck.
Yeah, basically.
It ends up on a truck going to your customer.
We did do, like, for example, with Northern Canning, they had, because they're a mobile canner, they're obviously relying a lot on the gas and the price of gas. So there was a price increase there, which is not surprising. But one of the things we try and do is then increase the amount that we're canning by volume because we hit then a price discount that offsets then the increase in price for them. So if we can a little bit more, we pay a little bit less per can, and we save a little bit more money that way, and then that offsets the price increase from the supplier. So
Now, I'm intrigued by that. Because I know how much you can store here.
Yeah.
So you're having to really plan that out.
yes and no, because we have a bit of an advantage over other breweries in that most of the breweries are going to have to can off of a bright tank. They may only have one bright tank, so they may have to maximize what's coming out of the bright. But we have our bright tank, we have our 6 serving tanks. The 6 serving tanks hold 10 hex each, or 1,000 liters each. So when the mobile canner comes in, I can can basically up to 7 brands at a time.
I forgot about that, yes.
Yeah.
And that does make a big difference.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. So not only are we able to get like a lot of brands out in one go, but we can also maximize the volume that we can. So we can hit better price points per can the more volume we have.
So how long would more than canning be here every day?
It's about an 8-hour day. It's pretty normal production day.
Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, we're not emptying each tank for each brand. We're doing, let's say, maybe, let's say on average 700 liters per brand. But no, they're great. They come in, they're super punctual. They come in right at 9 o'clock. They set up, and we're usually canning before 10:30. We just run solid for.
Yeah, plus their travel time. Yeah. Wow. They've gotten it down to a science, haven't they?
Very, very much. Yeah, they're great. I really love working with them. They send great teams all the time, and rarely do we have problems with product and canning and foaming and issues like that. And we've hit bumps a couple of times, but the last run was great. The run before that, a couple of brands were not great, but we just do our best every time. It varies. There's one here that's sort of, I'm not actually.
We'll look at it later. I just curious, there was a movement towards like labels that are actually recyclable labels.
Oh, we are not doing that. No, no. We're not. So I thought you were talking about design of the labels. No, no, we're just, what's the label for them? What's the name for them? Yeah, pressure sensitive. Yeah. Pretty standard. They do. We don't. Northern has just an inline labeler. So the cans come off, they're seamed, rinsed, blown dry, run through the labeler, we pack them off, they're ready to go. For stuff that we do in-house, we have just a manual / automatic labeler that's 1 can at a time with a foot pedal.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I've seen that at Rob's.
And we have the same one. Yeah. Yes. So it's.
Can I help you, Rob?
No. It's not bad.
Yeah.
If you've got to do, 8 or 10 flats, but if you're looking
In different cases, eh?
no, not one of the 50 cases. No, that would be a problem.
So now I have a curiosity question.
Okay.
So if one of the biggest loss factors in a brewery is all that transfer into a canning line and the losses while you get the canning line set up. I'm gonna, does Northern Canning have that down to such a science that your losses are at a real minimum now?
That's an excellent question. So, yes and no. So it's interesting. This is not a jab at Northern because they have a business model that's set up. Those price points, for example, 25 hectoliters is a price point where we hit a lower price point per can. That's beer in cans, 473 mils per can, you're calculated out of there. 100% fine. In that process, though, we are using or spending more than 25 hectoliters for the beer because there's losses in the lines, there's losses at the canning, at the point of canning. It's not exactly 473 mils per can. It's almost always going to be more because we're weighing them as we go randomly. So if there's some that are below that point, then they're off the line to low fills. So I haven't done the calculation because I'm not exactly sure how much. I can do a calculation for how much is lost in the line per transfer. I don't know exactly how much is lost at the point of canning. But sorry, go ahead.
No, so they still have the same issue that you would have if you had your own canning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But they're probably better managing it than I would because they know a lot more about it than I do.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to minimize the losses that I can control.
Yeah, because I know losses can be as high as 18%. And so I was just wondering if they were managing to get it down around 10.
I definitely try to keep it below 10 for sure. Yeah. But it's tough. I mean, if you sort of, as a layperson watching somebody working in the brewing industry, like we literally dump beer down the drain at times because, you know, we're trying to bleed up a line or we're trying to clear it of, you know, carbonation and gas. So there is beer basically going down the drain. And it happens a fair bit, but that's accountable loss that we're dealing with.
So when you do a switch over, there's a loss in that process because you can't package the first sort of 10 liters coming out.
Right. Because of the point, so the length of line from the tank to the canning line is a lot. Yes, X number of meters. And we hit a point where, okay, we're done with that brand. We've packaged X number of cans with that particular brand. And then we switch to the next brand. And there's still the previous brand in the lines. So we need to bleed up the new brand that is lost beer at that point.
Yeah, sell that as a question mark. We're not sure what this tastes like.
Well, that has happened in the past. Yeah. And in smaller runs, sometimes what we have done is just like hook up to the new tank and say, okay, brand A, we do have our allotment. Now the next bunch of cans that come through, we'll pay for them, but they will be shunted off and not for sale because they will be like possibly blended, and then until we are sure that we've got brand B right up to the filling heads, then we'll take that loss. So yeah, we could do that. Maybe I'll do that on the next one that's coming up. 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Limited edition mystery summer beer.
yeah, absolutely.
Doug Ford's bucket can beer.
Yeah.
So you alluded to a vacation in Iceland and Ireland.
Yep, we took off sort of middle of May to end of May for 2 weeks. Just my wife and I. Our kids are adults now, so they joined us. And that was the first time. Well, one was the first holiday that we've had since 2019. So that was amazing. And then it was also the first holiday that we've had on our own since.
We had kids.
Yeah, we did have one holiday where we left the kids at home on purpose. They were old enough to be on their own. But yeah, that was pretty incredible. Yeah.
I'm glad you had that qualifier.
Yeah.
We left the kids at home. They were only 2 and 3.
No, it was great. We went to Iceland. We were there for 3 days, and then Ireland for about 10 days.
Yeah, we can't we didn't meet up with brewers in Ireland. I mean, in Iceland.
Yes. Not as many as I wanted to, but our first day when we were on our way to our first Airbnb, we stopped at a brew pub, like pizzeria, small brewery that was owned and run by a woman. And so I had a nice visit with her. that was the most interesting thing, because she was saying, and the town that they're in is, and Iceland generally is obviously very active geothermally. So she was saying that the brewery is the hot water and the boil kettle are geothermally heated, which one was pretty amazing, but two, doubly amazing, because she said that the earth doesn't always want to provide enough heat. So, which meant that there's some brew days that they have that are not brew days, because they'll come in and their hot water tank is not hot enough, or they won't be able to get to a boil that day. So I found that pretty wild. She said that the entire town that they're in, the heating in the houses is geothermal, which seems to make sense, because even if there isn't quite hot enough, that you're still going to be warm enough to heat a house. You're just not going to be hot enough to make something to boil. So I found that quite fascinating. They were a very small brewery, but they had really great beer and very good pizza and super friendly, very accommodating. So I could see in a small brewery like that how, I mean, yes, your production concerns are still there, but if you're only doing, 1 hack or 5 hecks at a time, it's slightly less of a concern. But there would be also the flexibility to shift your brew day by a day or two until the earth is warm enough. I guess I'm not exactly sure how geothermal heating works, but if the earth needs to be warm enough, I guess you got to wait for it. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then I did meet a brewer in Ireland, sort of by chance. I was sort of looking at breweries that were near where we were staying, found one on Google Maps, but then lost it on Google Maps when we were out of the car, because technology is amazing. We ended up finding it totally by chance. I just turned down a road and like, oh, look, that's a brewery. And that's the brewery that I was looking for. So I ended up talking to him. He was quite nice. They were not in production because they were just in the midst of an expansion. So the brewery was shut down while they were sort of getting new tanks in and expanding and new floors and all that kind of stuff. But it was quite nice and accommodating. It was great.
Some questions off that. But let's talk about the third beer.
Third beer. This is called Fly Your Flag. This is a beer we did for Pride Month, with the proceeds from this beer going to Try Pride in town. And this, I'm super proud of this beer because this is one that was designed by my daughter, my eldest daughter. My younger daughter, so both daughters were in for the brew day, but my older daughter designed the beer. So as we were sort of talking about the design, she was thinking of, she likes tart beers, sour beers. So we sort of went with that as the base beer. And then she also enjoys cocktails. So she was thinking of like a Moscow Mule or something like that. So we've got this tart beer with some lime and ginger in it as well. Cheers, Fly Your Flag. Oh, that. Great. It's another great one for patio. It's 4.3%. Super light, super crushable, very refreshing. Very nice. She did a great job of designing.
So when you do lime on something like this, are you using pure lime juice? Oh, you did the hard thing.
Yes, sort of. I have a setup. I did a collab a couple of years ago with Job Site in Stratford, and I don't know if you've talked to the guys at Job Site or if you've been there, but it's all their former trades guys. And so when we were doing this collab, we were talking, and Phil Bueller, who's the brewer at Job Site, he said, "What can I bring to the collab?" And I was like, I have this idea, and I showed him a video of a larger brewery down the state that were zesting limes, and they'd use a power drill with the lime on the end and just run it over their zester. So it was like zip with the lime and then all the lime zest. I said, just bring a drill and figure out a way to get a lime on the drill so we can zest quickly and easily. And it was super easy, just a spade bit on the drill. put the lime on the end of it and zest, because we weren't using any part of the lime. So they created beautiful zest too. It was this very billowy, light zest. It was great. So we did that as well with this beer. So a lot of lime zest in, and same technique with the ginger as the folk summer. So in fact, in our lineup, we have 2 beers with ginger. I'm not opposed to it because I happen to like ginger, and they make for a refreshing beer for sure. It is, yeah. I find, for better or worse, the tartness of the base beer slightly overpowers some of the flavors that are there, but they're there in the finish and in the aroma as well.
It took me 3 sips sort of to get the lime, and then, oh, okay, there's the ginger. But yeah, I can see that the tartness does overpower.
Yeah, which is not a bad thing. This is also this is the Escarpment Labs yeast, Lactic Magic. So it allows me to do tart / sour beer without the introduction of bacteria or the concerns of cross contamination like that. So the lactic acid is produced in fermentation, which is great for me. It's perfect. We don't have a market at our brewery for a lot of sours. Other breweries like Shortfinger, they've got that market covered, and that's perfect. When people come to us asking for sours, as long as they buy other things from us, we'll send them to Rob for sure. Walk through, does a good job with sours too, and all of that. So there are other people that do better things with different beers that we don't do. So I'm very happy to send them to them.
You also run that risk when you do a true sour beer, contaminating the brew.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first conversation Rob and I had, the first beer that I wanted to do. He goes, it'll be sour.
Yeah.
Because you can't do anything but sour. Yeah, it's all just the yeast is everywhere.
Yeah.
I saw that when I was at a pride party at Upper Thames, and they actually have a sour room. They have a completely closed off section of the brewery. That's where they do the sour beer.
Brewery has that too, and the Exchange Brewery at Niagara-on-the-Lake, they've got that set up as well. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
So I'm curious about, you've been to other brewers in Iceland and Ireland. What are the commonalities?
Everybody was dealing with COVID. Commonalities. I found Ireland kind of interesting, and I wish I'd visited more breweries because I really wanted to ask. My big question was about the craft breweries in Ireland. Do you have to have that Irish dry stout, Irish red ale, and a lager, basically? It seemed no, because the craft beers that I was trying over there were all of anything but that. Of course, they do seem to have that, but I think it's the understanding that Guinness kind of has that covered. To kind of have the Irish dry stout covered by Guinness, so the craft breweries don't necessarily have to do it. Supply chain issues, especially like I didn't get into a huge conversation in Iceland, but I can't even imagine issues with supply chain there. They would have, of course, stuff warehoused, but it's being shipped in from everywhere, and any delays are going to be major delays. So that would have been an interesting conversation to have.
I'd be curious if they're bringing more stuff in by air right now than by boat. Because Icelandic air always flies in direct.
Yeah. It's still though, I mean,
Cost factor.
yeah, cost factor and the delays,
Yeah.
are just going to be magnified. And yes, the cost factor in Iceland. So if the restaurants that we were in, nothing fancy, but a glass of beer is going to run you about the equivalent of $11 or $12 for a glass of beer. That was normally for 12 or 16 minutes. So it was super expensive. Even cans to go were in that $10, $12 range. For beer. Everything, cost of getting everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then like imported beer in Iceland was crazy expensive. And then once you get into sort of the more specialty beers, Russian Imperial Stouts, double IPAs, and stuff like that, those prices were like $20 for a glass of beer. For those because they're just yeah, basically.
Skip, I had a question. Oh, yes. IPA or APA styles in Europe. There's always been the talk about they really don't understand or know how to make a true APA or IPA. What was your experience of that, particularly in Ireland? Okay.
One thing I had trouble getting used to, oddly enough, you'll see on a tab, craft brewery, IPA, and you order it or you look at the details of it, and it's not quite fitting the IPA specs. It might be like around 5%, the IBUs a little bit lower, all of that. Still a delicious beer, love them. Realized after several days in Ireland that it's actually Irish pale ale that they're selling, that is an IPA. So yeah, which and then, once I realized that, I was like, oh, good for them. Awesome. Creates a little bit of confusion for the customer sometimes, I would imagine, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into sort of Irish pale ale, if there's anything that makes it really particularly unique. But they are using, a lot of American hops. They're using them well. Very tasty beers. Anything that I had was done well. So yeah, no issues there for sure.
Okay, no, I was just curious because I've heard from other people like you get into mainland Europe.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to find
I would say, if anything, the ABV levels skew a little bit lower. Probably related to sort of beer drinking sessions or session beers, that kind of thing. That you'll see the APAs and the IPAs still like below 6%. Not big heavy beers. It's kind of tricky to find the stuff that is like 6.5% or 7%. Not that I was necessarily looking, but again, you'd see an IPA or an IPA, and they would be fairly low on the ABV scale for that. Still, they're making very good beers, and didn't have anything that was particularly at fault. But everything was good.
So, active in the music world, how's that going?
Less active right now.
Summertime.
Summertime, yeah. Yeah, once September hits, it'll be hopefully a little bit more active. Hamilton Phil, one of my regular gigs. We have an actual season this year, which is nice. Previous seasons, I should rephrase that. We've had actual seasons for the last couple of years. They've just been quite pared down. So not the big full orchestra works as normal. A lot of chamber stuff, just to keep it more intimate in smaller venues, and obviously lower cost because you're hiring fewer musicians for. This season is more of a return to what we were before. So larger orchestral works in the big hall. More of them, more like a regular season from say 3 years ago, that kind of thing. So very much looking forward to that. London will be firing up again in September. I don't think there's much for me as a bass drum player there right away, but later in the season there will be some stuff for me, and then whatever other freelance stuff comes along. We had a great time from sort of mid-March when some things reopened to right literally the day before I went to Iceland was jam-packed with I got called to do some stuff with the National Ballet, stuff with the TWB Symphony. There was in London, one of the Harry Potter soundtrack, played a movie, orchestra plays the soundtrack. That was great. Really, really great repertoire for 2 months. And very busy. If that had been sort of, if all of that repertoire in those 2 months had been stretched over a season, that would have been an amazing season. And it was compressed into 2 months. It was even more amazing. It was just incredible. how did I find the time?
How did you find the time? I mean, you're here.
Yeah,
every day.
yeah, it's a bit of a struggle, but having Pete as my assistant here helps immensely. Where it doesn't necessarily help, and no fault of his, but for example, I did Mahler 2 with TWB Symphony, and almost all of those rehearsals were in the evening. So I was here all day for production, and then home to hopefully grab a nap and a bite to eat, and then back out for a 2.5 or 3 hour rehearsal in the evening. So I wasn't getting back home until 10:30 or 11, and then lather, rinse, and repeat for several days in a row that week. It's exhausting, but it's also very, very fulfilling, especially to play a piece like Mahler 2. I also did Brahms' German Requiem with KW this year. So it's incredibly fulfilling. Yes, it's tiring, but you come back at the end of the evening and very enriched, and your soul is filled, as it were. Good. Yeah. And I know you know that feeling as well.
Yes, they all know that we figured out
Yeah.
halfway through the brew day that to be listening to
Yeah.
one particular style of music.
That's right. Yeah.
Talk about the last year.
So this is our porter, the Pullman porter. Again, like the Maggie's Farm, it's sort of a 2-style porter, sort of straight down the middle with everything. It's around 5%. Good chocolate malts in there, the darker malts with the color. So good chocolate flavor, aroma, a little bit of roastiness, but not too much. A good amount of mouthfeel and body to it. It's good solid food. This is one. So this one and the Maggies are the legacy recipes. Ones that Colin, the previous brewer, designed and dialed in, and were here when I got here. The Folk Summer is one that he designed, but we worked together on it. That was one that came along when we were both here. And then the Flyer Flag is one that was just obviously done recently. So it's my recipe with my daughters.
What was it like working with your daughters? I saw the note on the board there from them to you. Yeah.
It's great. They're amazing people. They are, everything to me. So to involve my older daughter in the design of the recipe, and then to have both daughters here on the brew day, it's just good fun. They're fantastic people. They're very mature. They're hard workers, so they were helping me dig out, and they were helping all along the way on the brew day. It's great.
You're biased.
Oh, completely biased. Yeah. That's no question. What parent isn't completely biased about
That's
their
true.
kids?
You should be. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure your kids are amazing too. Not as amazing as mine. But I'm
We
sure
won't
you're
go
biased.
down that
Yeah,
road.
exactly.
My son is tuned in watching us.
There you go. Yeah, the best son ever. I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, he's got competition with my grandson and my granddaughter.
There you go. See.
Can't you can't beat that. That may happen. Miss Mava called me the other day to tell me that she was sick.
Yeah.
And that when she was better, I was to come down and see her so we could play together. 3.5, and I'm being told what to do already. Actually, she's been doing that since she was born.
Better yet? Did you go play? Oh,
They COVID running through the family, so it'll be at least another week and a half before I get to go see it.
Yeah.
That's just times.
Yeah.
What's your favorite style to brew now?
APAs or IPAs. I'll say still APAs or IPAs. That's sort of been a go-to for me for a long time. I love Maggie's Farm. I do like Wobbly Wheel, our flagship IPA. I love brewing whatever IPAs we're doing. I mean, our New England IPA is right there behind me, so that's coming out tomorrow.
So I was just going to ask you.
Yeah,
Hazy IPA style.
hazy IPA is good too. Yeah, New England IPAs are like. Yeah, I like that stuff. There's nothing wrong with everything else, but you know, at the end of a brew day. Oh, I do love to brew the blonde too. That kind of thing. The simple beers I love brewing. They're enjoyable on the brew day because they're usually fairly simple process wise. But then at the end of the brew day, they're great to have as the end of shift beer, end of day beer.
What's the most challenging beer?
High ABV beers on this system are, our efficiency is not great on the system. So to try and get a beer above 8.5 or 9% is just a challenge. And it's just, it's not a theoretical challenge, because it's an actual challenge, but it's not a physical challenge per se. It's just that struggle of, you know, kind of beating your head against the wall. Like, I've got this massive grain bill, I've got a long boil, I'm adding in, you know, extra sugars to bring the ABV up or to bring the starting gravity up, and I don't end up with as high an ABV as I'm looking for. It's just that sort of that disappointing struggle at the end of the fermentation process that I didn't get the target that I wanted to.
Because of the system that you have?
It's a little bit of everything. It's got a system, but then sometimes the yeast doesn't do what it's supposed to do. All of that. But, I'm working on it. It's always a work in progress. So, you know, tweaking things here and there to get the efficiency up and to be able to brew those high ABV beers. But it's not getting the efficiency up. It's not only for the high ABV beers. It helps at the low end as well, because you're saving up the higher efficiency. You're saving up grain. You don't need as much grain to for the beer. So it's a win-win.
What do you think is going to be the hardest struggle for the brewing industry over the next year?
Hoping keeping up with demand. I'm hoping, you know, restaurants come back full force. So licensees are back, tasting rooms are open and active. I think that's been one of the biggest things. Maybe going back to one of your previous questions, but I am going back to previous questions. I'm not answering this question right now. But the idea that when we reopened in March, everybody was braced for the flood of customers, and same with the flood of licensees. And it didn't happen that way exactly. And it's somewhat understandable, but it was also at some level disappointing as well. And maybe that's going to be the biggest challenge over the next year, is this anticipation of more sales and, you know, maybe struggling to keep up with demand and it not being there. That people have changed and the climate has changed in the sort of the consumption and the going out sort of climate of people, and that maybe not everybody is going to want to go to a tasting room still. Not everybody's going to want to go to a restaurant. That there's still that reluctance to go out and do that. So it's maybe hopefully still keeping up with demand, but it's going to be split between, you know, tasting room and licensees and packaging and getting it out to people in their homes. Well, it's trying to predict that, and even not only that, but just basic production leading up to that point. Is how much do I produce? What volume of this particular beer should I do? How often should I brew our flagship? All that kind of stuff. It's very. I would like to think I'm on top of it for scheduling and being there, but a lot of it is somewhat reactionary too, because you have to see, okay, well, that the previous tank of that particular beer, flagship beer, sold this quickly, so I need to brew it at this particular time and be on top of it. But then maybe that slows down in favor of something else that's new that's come along. So,
Where are you scheduled?
in reality, or in theory?
Theory.
In theory, I should be about a month to 6 weeks out. But sometimes, yeah, last week was like that. Last week was very much like that. Nobody's fault, and you know, nothing bad came of it. There was a shift in schedule because this week I'm actually on my own. I don't have Pete, but it's also a shorter week. So if I had Pete here on a 5-day week, I probably would have done 4 brew days, 2 big tanks.
Yeah.
But I had to make a shift to bump that big tank into last week. So I kind of did that at the beginning of the week, and then I realized that I don't know what I'm brewing into that tank. So I didn't have that figured out until about Wednesday, with the brew day being Thursday. So it was maybe 24 hours.
Wow.
It's not that huge a leap because I have ingredients in-house that I can figure it out fairly quickly. And you have to be able to do that in the event that you have planned for 2 or 3 months and then something falls apart at the last minute. You've got to be able to make that change quickly. In an ideal world, yes, I would love to be planned out 4 to 6 weeks and just have everything on the go. And I can't do that. It's just that scheduling and that planning actually takes a fair bit of time in itself. So it's a matter of sitting down for an hour or 2 and looking ahead to figure out where everything is going to sit and where the tanks are going to fall and all that. So. Yeah.
Fill on that because we're not on a patio or?
Yes, because they're still closing.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm gonna save my other questions for the next time I see you on the show.
That's awesome. I look forward to it.
Peter, thank you for taking time out of your busy life and sharing your stories with us again. We absolutely love it.
That's
I
awesome.
totally appreciate it.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you for coming to TWB and being here live.
It's so much pleasure to actually do this thing. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
We gotta go, guys, because we've got a hard cap to get out of here. Yeah, 9 o'clock.
Are there any very quick questions?
Just a minute. You're gonna get close.
Mike Brookfield, just go to Iceland. Just do it.
Yeah, Jackie would tell you the same thing.
Get the live audience view.
Sorry?
I said, can we get the live audience view?
Love the
Mr.
live
Hardy
audience.
there.